Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're unpacking something that is, quite frankly, a massive wake-up call for modern business security. If you're an executive overseeing technology, risk, or security, the May 2026 Tansac incident isn't just an IT problem, it's a fundamental structural shift in how our digital supply chains are being compromised. We're going to look at how threat actors managed to execute a fully automated heist, bypassing modern security controls not with some groundbreaking new hack, but simply by chaining together old, completely public information. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our bottom line up front for today. We'll start with the systemic shift, walk through the actual attack chain, look at the mini Shai Hulud worm, discuss how to harden maintainers, and wrap up with an executive defense roadmap.
All right, part one, the new systemic shift.
We really need to reframe how we look at these compromises. The defining characteristic of the TanStack incident wasn't some brilliant zero-day exploit. It was actually entirely predictable. The attackers didn't invent a new way to pick a lock. They literally just weaponized security research that had already been published, sometimes months or even years in advance. They just struck before the software ecosystem could comprehensively patch its systems. There's a quote from the forensic report that absolutely hits the nail on the head. The composition is the attack surface. This is crucial. In this May 2026 incident, there was zero novel attacker tradecraft used. None at all. They just took 3 known, publicly documented vulnerabilities and chained them together. It really goes to show how a highly competent, security-conscious team can be breached by a combination of flaws that, individually, wouldn't have been enough to compromise the system.
And that brings us to a massive business risk. Researchers are calling this research-to-tradecraft compression. Think about it. Every time a security researcher publishes a new finding, it effectively becomes an attacker's future playbook. And the real problem here? Attackers are automating the composition of these public findings way faster than defensive teams can possibly deploy mitigations across thousands of projects. It's a race, and right now, our mitigation speed just cannot keep pace with their automated attack chaining.
Moving on to part two, the 3-part attack chain. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how we break down the CI/CD pipeline breach. We're going to use a simple physical security analogy to make sense of this automated assembly line where code is built and published. There were 3 specific vulnerabilities: the Pwn Request, cache poisoning, and OIDC extraction. Now, these rely entirely on each other to bridge assumed trust boundaries. Each step essentially crossed a gap that the next step assumed was perfectly secure. The whole chain only worked because of the exact sequence. So let's look at the first step.
Vulnerability 1 is known as the Pwn Request. Imagine your company has this state-of-the-art smart lock right on the front gate. It's designed so any first-time visitor requires manual approval to get in. Makes sense, right? But there's a flaw in the wiring. If a stranger shows up wearing a delivery uniform, the gate just automatically opens. No review whatsoever. In the software world, this was a known configuration flaw that allowed an attacker to submit malicious code from an outside fork, and the internal systems just automatically executed it without any human review. So now they're inside the gate, which brings us to vulnerability 2, cache poisoning. Think of the software cache like a family's shared toolbox kept inside the courtyard. Since the attacker is already past the gate, they can easily slip a rigged, malicious tool right into that shared toolbox. And here's the real kicker. That rigged tool just sits there. It persists. It's waiting for a legitimate family member, or in our case, a trusted automated workflow, to just pick it up and use it during a totally normal process. And finally, we have vulnerability 3, stealing the master keys. Later that same day, a legitimate developer triggers a standard software release. The automated system reaches into the shared toolbox, grabs that rigged tool, and brings it right inside the house. Once it's in, that tool breaks open the homeowner's safe, steals the master deed, which here is an OIDC token extracted directly from system memory, and instantly transfers ownership of the property. The attacker then used this token to publish malware directly to the public registry, completely bypassing all normal security checkpoints. To put that into perspective, look at how incredibly fast this all goes down. Check out May 11th. Between the first publish wave at 1920 and the second at 1926, we are looking at just a 6-minute window. 6 minutes. In that terrifyingly short time frame, the attacker published 84 malicious versions across 42 different software packages. The velocity of this automated composition is so fast that the detonation happens before human alerts can even make it to a security dashboard.
All right, let's shift to part 3, the mini Shai Hulud worm.
You see, this wasn't just an isolated burglary of a single software project. Not at all.
It was actually just one node in a massive, self-propagating campaign executed by a threat group called Team PCP. The business impact here is absolutely staggering. Over 160 packages were compromised in this wave alone. Because this worm steals credentials and then uses them to infect other packages those developers maintain, it spreads like wildfire. It hit tools used by Mistral AI, UPath, and the Tansac packages alone hit pipelines with over 12 million weekly downloads. So if your enterprise uses modern web applications, you are almost certainly in the blast radius of this automated worm.
And what makes this campaign so insidious is how it completely bypassed modern compliance checks. You might be familiar with SLSA Build Level 3 attestations. It's basically a cryptographic stamp of approval that guarantees a package was built by an official workflow. But in this heist, that stamp of approval totally failed us. Why? Because the attestation was technically true. The official workflow, which was compromised, did actually build the malicious package. So it proved provenance for sure, but it proved that provenance alone does not equal safety. The stamp was completely authentic, but the goods inside were poisoned.
Okay, part 4, hardening open source maintainers.
So the crucial point is, how do we actually stop this specific chain? The post-mortem of the incident gave us 3 practical hardening steps to secure the open source projects your enterprise relies on. First, audit those front gate workflows. We have to make sure strangers in delivery uniforms can't just walk in. Second, pin your third-party actions to exact, immutable cryptographic hashes so dependencies can't silently change behind your back. And third, and this is kind of ironic, we need to take a step backward in automation. We need to move away from automatically generated OIDC tokens and go back to classic tokens that require a manual, human-in-the-loop review for software releases. Sometimes taking the human out of the loop actually removes the very friction that keeps us safe in the first place.
And finally, part 5, an executive defense roadmap.
Now, as business leaders, we know you can't audit every single line of open source code your company uses. But you absolutely can dictate your defensive posture with a few concrete steps. Let's walk through 3 key actions. Number 1, require install time monitoring. You need to detect malicious packages the exact moment they try to enter your environment. Number 2, enforce log file pinning. This is going to stop your systems from automatically downloading the latest potentially poisoned updates. And number 3, mandate CI/CD secret rotation every 30 to 90 days. The Shai Hulud worm relies entirely on stealing secrets. If you automate rotating those constantly, you drastically reduce the window of time an attacker has to actually use those stolen keys.
To wrap up, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to take back to your security leadership. As we've seen today, published security research is really just an attacker's future tradecraft waiting to be chained together. So ask your teams this: are your enterprise security defenses merely playing whack-a-mole with individual bugs, or are they fundamentally built to stop the automated composition of public research? The answer to that question is going to determine your resilience against the next massive supply chain heist. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.